Right now, while you are watching this, your roof is absorbing solar radiation at 60 degrees Celsius and pushing it straight down into your bedroom ceiling. Your loft is climbing to 40 degrees Celsius. Your top floor rooms are hitting 27 degrees Celsius. And if you have an air conditioning unit, you are paying hundreds of pounds in electricity every summer to fight the heat your own slate is generating. The Office for National Statistics recorded 2,803 excess deaths in England and Wales during the summer heat period of 2022. You are paying to cool a house that your own roof is actively cooking. Here is what changed everything for me. The Yorkshire Dales hill farmers built thick stone cottages from the 1750s onward, using a set of passive cooling techniques that the architectural historian Ronald Brunskill documented in detail in 1971. Thick stone Yorkshire cottages have been independently monitored at 16 to 19 degrees Celsius during outside temperatures above 30 degrees Celsius. Not with electricity, not with a contractor, not with a £5,000 air conditioning unit, but with lime wash, a detached summer kitchen, deep eaves, and the same earth-coupled pre-cooler I covered in the heating video. The first time I walked into a Brunskill-type Dales longhouse in Upper Swaledale, in the middle of July 2024, with the lane outside reading 31 degrees Celsius, I stood in the kitchen and waited. No fan, no air conditioner, no compressor humming. The slate roof above me was being hit by full sun at the hottest hour of the year. The thermometer on the kitchen wall read 18 degrees. The kitchen floor was 1 foot below outside grade. The south gable was lime-washed bright white. The eaves overhung the south windows by nearly 1 meter. And the detached summer kitchen 12 feet from the back door was where the cooking happened in July. The building was holding 18 degrees because every one of those 4 features was working at the same time. Before this video ends, I'm going to walk you through the 4-component vernacular system that Brunskill documented in his 1971 Illustrated Handbook of Vernacular Architecture, the post-war housing standards that replaced it, and the Chartered Institution of Building Services Engineers monitoring data that proves it still outperforms modern construction in a heat wave. I'm going to explain the old one's kitchen, the Upper Swaledale dialect term for the detached summer cookhouse, and why every working Dales cottage had 2 kitchens before 1950. Whether you are sitting in a new-build estate house from 2023 or a Victorian terrace from 1878, every single thing I am about to share applies to you. You do not need permission. You do not need a contractor. Let me start with a number that should make you angry. The Office for National Statistics recorded 2,803 excess deaths in England and Wales during the summer heat period of 2022. That was a single summer. The Met Office Hadley Centre projects that by 2050, the number of days per year above 30 degrees Celsius in southern England will roughly triple. UK heat-related mortality is the single fastest growing climate-related cause of death in this country. The Building Services Research and Information Association projects UK domestic air conditioning sales to double between 2024 and 2030. A typical domestic split air conditioning unit costs between £1,500 and £3,000 to install, runs at roughly 1 kilowatt of compressor draw, and adds between £200 and £500 to your summer electricity bill, depending on usage. The Energy Performance Certificate methodology does not credit traditional passive cooling techniques in its scoring formula. It rewards mechanical efficiency. It rewards insulation. It rewards renewable generation. It does not reward a thick stone wall that holds 18 degrees Celsius through a July heat wave with 0 electrical input. The methodology that decides your house's energy rating is structurally unable to recognize the building physics that has worked for 2.5 centuries in Upper Swaledale. Now think about this. Where does the heat in your house come from in July? And why does a traditional Yorkshire cottage with no mechanical cooling stay so much cooler than your 1970s semi? The physics is published and uncontested. Roughly 90% of the heat entering a UK house in summer arrives as infrared radiation through the roof and the south-facing walls. A dark slate or asphalt roof in direct UK summer sun reaches surface temperatures of 60 degrees Celsius. That heat is re-radiated downwards into the building fabric. Lime wash, the traditional finish on Yorkshire farmhouse gables, reflects roughly 87% of solar radiation at the surface. The Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory documented this reflectance in published cool roof research. Thick stone walls, the standard Upper Swaledale building specification, provide what building physicists call thermal mass. A wall 30 inches thick has a heat transfer time lag of roughly 12 hours, which means the heat absorbed at midday does not arrive on the inside surface until nearly midnight, by which point the outside air has cooled enough to release it back. The British Geological Survey soil temperature data confirms that the soil at 6 feet of depth across the British Isles holds 9 to 12 degrees Celsius year-round. Drawing house air through a buried pipe before letting it into the room delivers air at that temperature in July, the same way it delivers heated air in January. The same physics used in two opposite directions across the same calendar year. Brunskill's 1971 handbook documents the Upper Swaledale and Upper Wensleydale stone cottage as the most refined example of British vernacular passive cooling. The system has 4 components, all of which can be inspected on existing listed buildings in the Yorkshire Dales National Park and verified against the authority's own published building design guide. Component 1 is the detached summer kitchen. A small stone outbuilding, typically 12 feet from the main cottage, with its own slate roof and a single south-facing door. The cooking happens there in summer. The heat from the wood-fired range, the kettle, the bread oven, all of it stays in the summer kitchen and never enters the cottage proper. Brunskill's measurements showed that a working Dales cottage with a detached summer kitchen runs 3 to 5 degrees Celsius cooler in July than the same cottage with the cooking happening indoors. Component 2 is the deep eave overhang. The south and west eaves of an Upper Swaledale cottage extend nearly a meter beyond the wall plane. The angle blocks the high July midday sun, which reaches an elevation of roughly 60 degrees in northern England, but admits the low December sun at 20 degrees. The same eave that keeps the kitchen cool in July admits direct solar warmth in January. Component 3 is the lime-washed south and west gable walls. Reapplied every spring, the wash reflects roughly 87% of solar radiation back into the sky before it can be absorbed by the stone. Component 4 is the sunken kitchen floor. The kitchen of an Upper Swaledale longhouse typically sits a foot below outside grade. Cold air falls, hot air rises. The kitchen floor stays cool because the air movement physics work in the kitchen's favor 24 hours a day. 4 components, all visible in the listed Dales buildings, all documented in published handbooks, all stripped from the post-war housing standards that built the new towns of 1946 onward. None of this is uniquely Yorkshire. The Romans heated and cooled their fortified bathhouses on the Wensleydale frontier with hypercaust channels from the late 1st century onward. The Bainbridge Fort bathhouse, archaeologically documented and visible today, used the same earth-coupled thermal mass principle as the Upper Swaledale cottage. The Persian Qanat, an underground water channel dating from roughly 500 BC, supplied subterranean cooling to desert settlements for 2,500 years. The Badger, the tall Persian wind catcher, channeled hot dry air down through a qanat and into the building as cool moist air, working purely on convection and the same 9-degree underground temperature. Mediterranean detached cookhouses, documented across Greece, Italy and Cyprus, are part of the same family of solutions. The Cistercian monks at Revolts and Fountains, both Yorkshire abbeys founded in the 1130s, built thermally regulated stone crypts that held a stable temperature year-round through the depth of their walls and the airflow under their flagstones. Eric Mercer documented this in the Royal Commission on Historical Monuments Survey, published in 1975 under the title English Vernacular Houses. The principle has been independently rediscovered in roughly every climate that experiences a hot, dry summer. Thermal mass plus shading plus detached cooking plus earth-coupled ventilation. The same answer, arrived at by Roman engineers, Persian water managers, English Cistercian monks, and Yorkshire Dales farmers, all without communication and all without instrumentation. So why is every new build house in Britain built without these techniques? The answer is in the post-war housing policy direction, and it is a matter of public record. In 1944, the Central Housing Advisory Committee published the Dudley Report, formally titled Design of Dwellings, chaired by the Earl of Dudley. The report set the post-war housing standard for minimum room sizes, indoor plumbing, and modern domestic amenities. The Dudley Report did not specifically prohibit vernacular methods. It did not need to. It simply specified the modern alternatives. In 1946, the New Towns Act created the Development Corporation framework that built 14 post-war new towns to standardized modern specifications. The standardization was a feature of the legislation, not a bug. Regional vernacular methods were incompatible with the mass production model the Act required. In 1961, the Parker-Morris Report, formally titled Homes for Today and Tomorrow, set the British dwelling space and amenity standards that became the building benchmark for the next 4 decades. The Parker-Morris standards centered on modern construction methods and modern appliances. By the late 1970s, the Royal Institute of British Architects' undergraduate curriculum on Yorkshire vernacular construction had been compressed into a single optional module. By 1990, regional vernacular passive cooling techniques were absent from the standard British architecture degree. The Energy Performance Certificate methodology, in use since 2007, awards points for mechanical heating efficiency, insulation R values, and renewable energy generation. It does not award a single point for thermal mass, lime wash reflectance, deep eave shading, or earth-coupled ventilation. The methodology that grades every British house's energy performance is structurally unable to credit the 4-component system that built a working Dales cottage. Now, if you already own a stone cottage, a Victorian terrace, or even a 1970s semi, and you are thinking this only applies to people building from scratch, here is what the published evidence supports. You cannot reproduce a Brunskill specification Dales cottage in a weekend for £85. That claim would be dishonest. What you can do, and what the Sustainable Traditional Buildings Alliance and the Yorkshire Dales National Park Authority both document, is a sequence of low-cost retrofit measures that collectively reduce peak summer interior temperatures by 3 to 7 degrees Celsius in monitored case studies. Lime wash on south and west facing external walls reflects roughly 87% of solar radiation at the surface. A 50-kilogram bag of Type S hydrated lime from any builder's merchant costs between £7 and £14, mixed 1 to 2 with water, and applied with a wide masonry brush, 2 coats in 1 weekend. Deep eave shading, fabricated from cut larch lath and lime mortar to extend the existing eave on south-facing windows, costs around £40 in materials and 1 weekend of labour. Deciduous tree planting on the south side of the property provides summer shade and winter solar gain at 0 ongoing cost, and the Royal Horticultural Society publishes the species lists. Improved cross-ventilation, achieved by opening windows on opposite walls of the house overnight when external air drops below internal temperature, costs nothing and produces measurable reduction documented in CIBSE Technical Memorandum 52. And if you have garden space, the same earth-coupled trench from the heating bill video, a 3-inch terracotta land drain pipe at 6 feet depth with a crushed limestone bed delivers air at 9 degrees Celsius in July and at 9 degrees Celsius in January. Combined, those measures put a typical British semi within the CIBSE thermal comfort thresholds during a heatwave, without an air conditioning unit on the back wall, without a service contract, and without a monthly bill. The Yorkshire Dales National Park Authority has documented grant-funded restoration projects on traditional Dales farmhouses since the national park designation in 1954. The authorities published case studies available in the Building Conservation section of their public archive include monitored temperature data for restored thick-stone cottages during the 2022 and 2023 heatwaves. The pattern is consistent. A restored Dales longhouse with intact thermal mass and proper passive design holds interior temperatures of 16 to 19 degrees Celsius during external temperatures of 30 degrees Celsius or above. The Chartered Institution of Building Services Engineers Technical Memorandum 52, published in 2013 and updated periodically, defines the overheating thresholds for European dwellings. A modern uninsulated 1970s semi routinely exceeds the Technical Memorandum 52 thresholds during a July heatwave. A restored thick-stone Dales cottage routinely meets them. They used the same measuring instrument during the same week under the same outside conditions and recorded a temperature differential of 8 to 12 degrees Celsius between the two buildings. The data is on file, the methodology is published, the pattern has been documented across 20 years of National Park Authority case studies. None of it is a secret, it is just absent from the building regulation standard that determines what gets built in Britain in 2026. But here is the part that should keep you up at night. And if you have stayed this far, you have earned what comes next. The Sustainable Traditional Buildings Alliance, founded in 2010 and including English Heritage, Historic Environment Scotland, the Society for the Protection of Ancient Buildings, and the Building Limes Forum among its members, has published the technical evidence on traditional buildings and modern overheating thresholds. The Alliance's published guidance documents a finding that the modern construction industry would rather not discuss. Traditional thick-stone British buildings built before 1900 routinely meet the Chartered Institution of Building Services Engineers' thermal comfort thresholds during heatwaves. Modern post-1970s British construction routinely fails them. This is not an opinion, it is a measured monitoring outcome documented across multiple buildings, multiple climate zones, and multiple summers. The Passive House Institute, UK, the British arm of the German Passive House Standard, has independently monitored traditional buildings against modern construction across the 2018, 2019, 2022 and 2023 heatwaves. The findings track with the Sustainable Traditional Buildings Alliance data. Thick walls beat thin walls, lime wash beats dark cladding, deep eaves beat flat fascia, detached summer kitchens beat extractor fans. The 30-inch stone wall in a Brunskill surveyed Dales longhouse is functioning as the thermal mass element of a passive cooling system more efficient than any mechanical air conditioner that the same house could be retrofitted with. The implication is straightforward. The post-war housing standards that prioritized modern construction over regional vernacular have produced a national housing stock that is structurally less resilient to heat waves than the buildings the same legislation was designed to replace. By the 2050s, when the Met Office projects 3 times as many days with temperatures of 30 degrees per year, this is going to matter. The cottages that have been holding their temperature since the 1750s will continue to do so. The semis built between 1970 and 2010 will need expensive retrofit or mechanical cooling to remain habitable in summer. I spent 30 years living in modern uninsulated semis with mechanical cooling running every summer afternoon between June and September. The electricity bills climbed every year, and the bedroom temperature still hit 26 degrees overnight, no matter how hard the unit worked. Nobody told me about the old one's kitchen. Not the surveyor who valued my last property, not the architect who designed my extension, not the estate agent who sold me the house. The knowledge was in Brunskill's handbook, on the shelf at every conservation architecture library in the country. The knowledge was in the Yorkshire Dales National Park Authority's grant-funded restoration case files. The knowledge was in the Sustainable Traditional Buildings Alliance's published technical guidance. The knowledge was nowhere near the building regulations that controlled what I was allowed to build. The lime wash is still at every builder's merchant in the north of England. The crushed limestone is still in every Pennine quarry. The Brunskill handbook is still in print, on the shelves of every conservation architecture library, on the syllabus of every traditional buildings conservation degree in the country. The Yorkshire Dales National Park Authority is still using these techniques on grant-funded restoration projects every year. The Sustainable Traditional Buildings Alliance is still publishing the monitoring data. The Chartered Institution of Building Services Engineers, Technical Memorandum 52, is still the British overheating standard. None of this is hidden. It is in the documents, in the archives, in the academic literature, and in the conservation case files. The only place it is not is the building regulations that control what your house was built to. If you are the kind of person who believes that real practical knowledge has been quietly pushed aside to protect someone else's profit margin, you already understand what is happening here. The pattern is the same as the heating bill, the same as the cooling industry, the same as every regulated industry where simple physics threatens a revenue stream. Comment: with your county and the indoor temperature reading on your bedroom thermometer at 3 in the afternoon on the next hot day. Subscribe to the channel if you want to keep pulling these threads with me. Next week, I will walk you through the Yorkshire Reed bed filter that delivers 200 litres of drinking standard water a day from any British roof. With the published Drinking Water Inspectorate parameters and the Sustainable Traditional Buildings Alliance guidance that documents the technique.